Recording going on. So today we're going to be talking about neuroinflammation and what is that, how does it happen, what are the symptoms, and how to reverse it. I think neuroinflammation is incredibly common. I'm trying to think how many people I think have it. At least 25%, I would say, maybe up to 50%, because of the way we're living and eating nowadays. I think a lot of people have some low-grade neuroinflammation, and then there are people, definitely some in our community, who have a more serious type of neuroinflammation we'll talk about today. So the information I'm going to be presenting today came quite a bit from Dr. Tatis Karazian, who's an amazing mind in functional medicine. He was originally a chiropractor, but he has tons of training. He does tons of research, and he really specializes in neurology. I've done some work with him before on functional labs and other topics. And when I saw this neuroinflammation course offered, I thought, well, I want to take this because of my own history with mold. And I know my brain has been very much affected, but I don't really understand the mechanisms. So when I started the course, I thought, I'm not sure this is a fit, because he was talking about things like MS and Parkinson's. But as we got into it, it was very much a fit, because mold toxins can really trigger a lot of these patterns in the brain, as well as other things. So we'll talk about the reasons for neuroinflammation. If you are on the Zoom webinar, you can type in questions or comments in the chat whenever you want. I will mostly take them at the end, but I will take, maybe stop sometimes. Pauline is switching to a natural deodorant and did the armpit detox we talked about. That's awesome, Pauline. Yeah, I should have posted more deodorants on there than I did, but I just kind of stuck with my favorite. But I'm also now using the ones from Primal Organics, which are really great as well. So thanks to people who are just joining on. Again, my name is Bridgit Danner from Hormone Detox Shop. Today we're going to be talking about neuroinflammation. What is it, and why do you need to know about it? I also am going to share in the chat, and I'll share later on Facebook after this, when I'm have more of a chance to get to it. I'll put all the links on Facebook. But this is a presentation I made more formally for a summit I'm going to be in very soon. It's sort of called like an energy and adrenal summit. So I have a few lectures in there, and the one I did on brain inflammation is brand new. So I will put that in the chat. It's free, and it'll be a deeper version of what I talk about today. So let me get that in the chat. And we also have a free gift, just an ebook on this subject. So I'm going to talk about a lot of different things. I know that, I know that it's, you want it sometimes in writing. So first of all, I put that link for the summit just now. I'd love for you to join. Some of the other people on there are Evan Brand, who's a good friend of mine. And I don't remember everybody. Let me go look and see everybody else who's in that event. Terry Walls, who is fantastic. Marcel Pick, who's a hormone expert. Nikki Gratrix is an expert on energy. Emily Fletcher on meditation. Tom O'Brien on, Tom O'Brien's talking about the blood-brain barrier on this summit. For that alone, I would think it's worth tuning in. You're going to learn about the blood-brain barrier today. Michelle Sands talking about the adrenal glands. Todd Watts talking about parasites and biotoxin illness. Maria Claps talking about midlife health. Dan Pompa talking about cellular health. So it's a great event. It's totally free. Let's see when it starts. You might get access right away. I think it might be kind of a running event where you get access right away. So go check that out. Again, the link is in the chat, and then I'll put it on Facebook later. And one more thing I want to give you is, again, that link for our free ebook about the brain. So I will put that in the chat as well. And lastly, I'm just going to tell you all this now before I get started, and then I'll probably tell you it all again and again at the end. I'll give you a coupon code because you're going to learn about a few supplements today, and I want to thank you for coming. It's your time, and I really appreciate you being on here. So I want to give you a little thank you for coming, which is a coupon code for 10% off all our detox and digestive supplements. We're not just going to talk about supplements today. We're going to talk about lifestyle and a lot of other things. But I wanted to give you that. So boom, those are all the things. So let's dive in. So why should you learn about brain inflammation? Again, I said earlier, I think that many people are suffering from it and complaining about things like brain fog, fatigue, poor recall, but there's a lot of other symptoms as well, muscle twitching, indigestion, hormonal imbalance, can't lose weight, can't sleep. So these things are all quite common, right? And I think we're often chasing symptoms and not getting better. And similar to how when I talk about toxins, if you feel like you're doing everything right and something's not getting better, look at toxins. Similarly, I would say look at the brain. The brain is in charge of everything else, right? And if the brain is damaged, not just from accidents, but from other things as well, the communication is off. The gut communication actually is affected extremely quickly. Like within 72 hours, you could be producing a lot less enzymes. You could have leaky gut, then you're susceptible to infections. So now I ask every private client, have you had a head injury? Have you had emotional trauma? I just try to get a picture of that history. Even if it was when you were a kid and you kind of forgot all about it, it's still relevant. It can take 10 years to manifest into symptoms, and it can worsen. So every one of us is nervous about dementia, I would say, and mood changes when we get older, cognitive changes when we get older. And this is really often the reason, or the only reason. So it's important to learn about it for prevention as well. Just want to see. So Dana said she'd like to know more about traumatic brain injuries. Yep, we're going to talk about that. Very good. Thank you, Dana. Dana or Dana, I don't know how to, people say it different ways. So let's dive in a little bit more and talk about the brain itself. So there are 100 billion neurons in the brain that conduct the messages, but actually that's only 10% of the brain. 90% of the brain is what are called neuroglial cells or glial cells, and there are trillions of these. And these provide support, structure, communication, immunity in the brain. So they sort of are doing everything in the background so that the brain can work. There's different types of these glial cells. I'll just mention a couple. The microglia do the cleaning. They move around the brain. They actually move and eat up proteins that are like waste products and plaques for dementia. They help keep neuroplasticity so you can keep learning as you age, and they prevent neurodegenerative diseases. They take up 17 to 20% of the brain, so pretty interesting. Astrocytes are like synapses. They are important for the signaling, also important for blood flow, and they're part of the blood-brain barrier tight junctions. Pretty interesting, right? So we need that blood-brain barrier intact so the brain doesn't get inflamed. Oligodendrocytes provide the myelin sheath for things like MS, that would be involved in that. So these glial cells have a shape, sometimes like a starfish shape. And when they have been injured, they can shrink up and look more like a blob, in which case they can't move around, reach around, and do what they're supposed to do. And when they lose that shape, that's something called glial priming. And that is sometimes not able to be reversed, which is sad, but true. So I think it's something to keep in mind. I've had brain insult from mold. I've also had a head injury as a child, but mostly from mold I've been affected. And to be honest, I think there's some things I won't 100% get back. But I can get back, 90%, 95%, but I have to be careful, and we'll talk about why soon. So when these cells die, they do not regenerate, but inflamed cells can be improved in their function. So dying, cannot reproduce like some other areas of the body, but inflamed cells can be recovered. So that's the good news. So the difference between neuroinflammation and glial priming is more or less the extremity of the symptoms. So an inflamed brain will have more moderate symptoms, but still very crippling, like fatigue, depression, poor stress handling, waking up at night, poor recall, low blood sugar. Those are some of the hallmarks of an inflamed brain. A primed brain will be things like you smell a fragrance and you pass out, or your heart starts racing. Or you eat gluten and then you're in bed for a week because it hit you so hard. Or you have a minor, jostling and you lose your motor function. Or you're going now just not from depression to raging, maybe when you're exposed to mold. So primed is more like that secondary reaction. So the glial cells have already been affected, and now they're maybe trying to come back out, but they get reaffected. So they shrink up and start misbehaving again really quickly. So when I was in my acute phase of mold, I was more primed. There were some things that happened really quickly, and I can occasionally slip back into a little bit of what I would say more of a primed state. But mostly I'm managing in just general inflammation and managing it pretty well. So that's the really good news. If you have had something like a TBI, like Dana mentioned, your best bet is to try to come out of the primed state as much as you can, but you need to be really careful. You need to be careful about other head injuries, even minor ones, being overstimulated, poor diet, poor sleep that we'll get into. Sometimes things can't be totally prevented because life happens. So it's just kind of be a condition to know about if you've had a major head trauma. So some things that can cause neuroinflammation or glial priming are brain injury, head injury, like we talked about. Emotional trauma can actually have the same effect on the brain. An infection that crosses the blood-brain barrier, mold toxins, aging, silent stroke. Silent stroke and aging and stroke are ones that probably should be talked about more. Just being over 60 increases your chances of these things, unfortunately. And apparently many people have silent stroke. That's something in my practice I never really learned about. But just know if your client's over 60 or you yourself are over 60, unfortunately, just due to some of the aging process of the body, you're a little more susceptible. But again, we'll talk about prevention and staying healthy. If you have a leaky gut, that can lead to a leaky brain, and then you can be more susceptible. An autoimmune condition against your brain can also be at play, and there is a way to test for that. And then hypertension, when there's excess blood pressure in the brain, that can create some conditions of inflammation in the brain as well. No questions right now, so I'll just keep going. So some of the symptoms I mentioned, but let's just talk about them again. Actually, one that is common is constipation. And how many of us have constipation, or our clients have constipation? The brain being affected affects the vagal nerve. So you can have slow movement, and then you can have other things happening, right? Like incomplete digestion. So any kind of digestive disturbance can be linked to this. Waking up in the night, that's kind of a blood sugar management issue. So when your brain is inflamed, you use a lot more sugar. not just white sugar, right? Anything you eat is going to be going to the brain. So mental fatigue, well, you know, when I took this course, it was like so many light bulbs went off for me. I don't, you know, it's 1:15 where I'm at right now. Like, this is where I'm starting to go downhill because I just can't, you know, I'm still okay for now, but I can't work a 8-hour day thinking hard. I just can't do it. So mental fatigue or just general fatigue. There's lots of types of fatigue, but especially I would say mental fatigue, but it could just kind of feel like any type of fatigue for you. Numbness, muscle twitching, poor stress handling. Maybe you're easily startled. You can't take a lot of stimulation. I'm definitely that way. Depression, poor appetite. That one's actually more common than you think. Multiple food or chemical sensitivities, mood swings, and needing a lot of sleep. So if you seem to need 10 hours of sleep a night just to function, or 12 hours, that's just the brain recovering, right? The brain is inflamed and you're working it all day long and it needs to recover. So testing options, there are testing options. It's not super straightforward. So sometimes you can just go by symptoms or knowing that you have other conditions. You know you've been exposed to mold, you know you have a head injury, you know you've had a stroke. But there are some blood markers that can help kind of give clues. So homocysteine blood marker, there's a marker called GGT. You can check for glutathione levels. You can, let's see, no, never mind, so forget that one. But you can check for glutathione levels, but that's not what I meant to say there. You can check for different kinds of anemia and asthma. You can do breath tests because the brain needs to get oxygen. So if anything is inhibiting that, that can also be inhibiting your progress. And maybe most interestingly that I found out in this course is there are a couple tests to actually test your blood-brain barrier and autoimmune attacks on the brain, and these are by Cyrex Labs. So it is a lab we're signed up with. I like to run this test on myself, so we haven't totally set it up yet, but it is an offering we can do. Testing your gut for zonulin, a marker of leaky gut, can be suggestive of the brain. It's not, one-to-one though. But if you see a leaky gut, I would fix that because it can lead to leaky brain. Then there's a few other things. In the blood, you can test for complement proteins. There's a marker called S100B that can be elevated when the blood-brain barrier is breaking down. Again, testing the gut more for celiac, gluten antibodies. You can test for handwriting, actually, to see if it changes over time. And you can do some sort of in-office tests for eye movement and muscle tone. Obviously, we're not doing that in an online setting, but if you see a local functional neurologist, that may be something that they offer. Testing for hemoglobin, oxygen, again, just getting oxygen to the cells. Blood pressure, we talked about hypertension. So I'm just going over these briefly because there's honestly no quick, easy fix for testing this stuff. And it would be something you have to work with a practitioner, or again, just go with the information you already know. If you're displaying a lot of symptoms and you know you have some of the triggers, you'll see that the remedies aren't really that difficult. So you may as well go for it. So some of the ways to address it, Dr. Karazian really stressed that you need to do the lifestyle stuff. You can't just go to supplements. And a couple of the top things he mentioned were improving sleep. So if you're waking up at night because your brain needs sugar, sometimes when your sugar goes low, you will go to stored sugars and release them for the sake of the brain, and that'll wake you up. I personally don't see that as the only thing happening with neuroinflammation. He says really focus on blood sugar for that. So for some people, that might be mean eating more frequently. eating more complex carbs and fats, just stabilizing that blood sugar. That's sort of step one. We'll talk about some other steps in a minute. But I also think, things like melatonin and hops and magnesium, and there's a little trick with nutmeg and almond milk. It's an Ayurvedic thing you can make. I think some of these things can be helpful, and just really that nighttime routine of getting off screens at least an hour before bed, getting in a darkened environment, reading, relaxing. I think it can help. But he really stressed blood sugar as being the most important factor in this particular case. So as far as diet, I mentioned maybe eating more frequently, eating, complex whole food meals more often. Some people are just going to need that. They might need to eat every couple hours. But to graduate as we kind of go on, no gluten, no dairy is for starters. Also no alcohol. Alcohol is very neuroinflammatory. So if you don't tolerate alcohol, it's a big clue that something's going on with the brain. Could be the liver too, I guess, but really it happens quick to the brain. That's how I've been for years now, and it sucks, but it was also very eye-opening to hear it in this talk. So no gluten, no dairy, they're inflammatory for the brain and can disrupt that blood-brain barrier. Going to more of a paleo diet or a paleo autoimmune diet is sort of the middle ground. Many of you are already doing that. And then going to ketogenic diet. So you don't just go from eating every 2 hours to keto. There has to be some progress where you're spacing meals and getting stronger. And then you could go to keto using the ketone strips, the full shebang. There's a lot of research being done or has been done about the brain and ketogenic diet. So I don't, again, think that you should dive right into the ketogenic diet. But if you're almost there or you're close to there, you may want to try it for brain performance. And then once that's established, you could do more intermittent fasting, like eating within an 8-hour window, that kind of a thing. To me, I think a high-fat diet, no alcohol, lots of fiber, we're going to talk more about that, is an important start, and the no alcohol. He also mentioned not to have whey protein because that's also inflammatory, so keep that in mind. And then, lots of fiber because we want to keep the gut healthy because it's sort of that second barrier next to the brain, and feeding your good bacteria with fiber is really important. So next thing to think about is exercise. You don't want to skip exercise if you have an inflamed brain. Even if you're quite sick and you're not working, you want to move to the extent you can, and then you want to slowly push that barrier. When I was very sick, I had a practitioner tell me this, and I was like, I was resistant, but I would just go to the gym and do little machines, but it felt good. And then I started doing reformer Pilates, which was a really good workout for me because I wouldn't get injured and it would be very focused. And it does actually help me think better. You just don't want to do so much that you don't recover and it hurts your brain. If you're having to recover for 2 days after a workout, it was certainly too much. And you don't want to do anything that's dangerous. So if you have balance issues, you don't want to dive into power yoga. You maybe want to do some yoga at home and challenge your balance, but be in a safe environment where you can work up to more. Ideal is to do burst workouts, short, 5 45-second bursts with breaks in between, or even just a 1-minute burst 10 times a day is what he likes the best. But any exercise is beneficial. So, if you like to walk, that's great. But I would say just don't get stuck in doing one type of exercise. Mix it up a little bit. If you avoid cardio like I do some cardio. A lot of clients I've had over the years say, well, I like to walk. I walk a lot. That's great. Walking's great, but it's not exercising you in a diverse way. It's just one way to exercise. So you do need to challenge yourself a bit. So that exercise really circulates the brain, and it helps give you oxygen and kind of clean up damaged cells. So it's really important. And then the last lifestyle thing is doing brain exercises. So there is a quiz about brain regions you'll get if you opt into that brain ebook that I gave you on the chat. And that one will let you see potentially what areas of your brain are struggling. And then you can match exercises for that. For instance, if you are very sensitive to sound, like oversensitive, you may want to purposefully listen to, classical music, jazz music, and really pay attention to the sound. You're retraining your brain to handle and make sense of sound. It's quite fascinating. I don't have a ton of resources and links on this because it's kind of new to me. But if you have trouble with balance, work on balance. If you have trouble with memory, work on memory. There's lots of exercises out there, and I did give some links to that. Let me take a little break, and then we'll talk about supplements. Dana is the name. Okay. Rachel asked, how do you know if a head injury is serious? She has hit her head on various times, and she's got some other diagnoses. So Rachel, the tricky part is, okay, so one thing to know is if you lose consciousness, that's serious, even if it's only for 5 seconds. Or if you're hospitalized, it's very serious. However, you can have neither of those and it's still serious. If it's just a bad bonk on the head, it could still be enough that, like what you're describing, it sounds like it was a pretty bad bonk on the head. And Rachel's also dealing with some other infections. She's had hypertension. So you have a lot of triggers that kind of suggest you could have some neuroinflammation, Rachel. You can do an MRI. I forgot to mention that. The traditional doctor will just say, you have some white matter abnormalities or something. They, just like lab testing, they have a broader range, and they say, oh, you're getting older. We see some little abnormalities, but it's normal. But those can actually be what's causing symptoms for you. So again, if you go to a conventional doctor, they may disregard them. But I think it's something that, is one way to test. But Rachel, you may want to talk to a functional neurologist, or you just may want to read our information and start trying some of it, because it is pretty approachable. And Rachel, what you're describing is pretty typical to what Dr. Karazian said to look for. A client who is going from doctor to doctor, getting a little relief, but then things get worse. Something seems to help, but then it doesn't. Things get re-triggered. Again, the brain is going to so many systems. I know you have Lyme and you've got a lot of stuff going on, so there's a lot of ways to look at it. But I would think about looking at it from this brain perspective, probably while you address those infections. Okay, so last section is on supplements. And we're doing a video, so I just decided to bring a whole bunch. Most of which we sell, some of which we don't. The one thing we don't sell that he mentioned was this Enterovite. It's a short chain fatty acid mix. Short chain fatty acids are the end product of breaking down fibers. So we don't sell that one because we sell fiber. We sell this prebiotic fiber that I really like. So I think that kind of does the job. Or you can be having more vegetables in your smoothies. You can just be cooking and eating a wider variety of vegetables. Sometimes we don't tolerate vegetables because of our digestion or because we're not used to them. So you got to ease into it. But I really like our fiber product. Again, starts to feed the right bacteria and heal the gut lining, which in turn can heal the brain lining. So pretty easy. Fish oil. Fish oil is anti-inflammatory for the brain. It's also anti-inflammatory for the gut. The DHA is for the brain, and the EPA is for the gut. So this is very safe to take. We sell it in a liquid because you can just get more into you. Just down a spoonful. If you don't digest fats well, you may want to try our liver gallbladder formula to help digest the fats for you. Another supplement he really likes for the brain is magnesium. I think ours is the best. It's a magnesium glycinate chelate, and it's in a powder form. So you can do just a spoon a day as maintenance, or you can do a couple spoons a day if you're in a flare. If you take too much, it could cause some loose stool, but you'd really, 1 or 2 teaspoons spread out through the day is not going to do that. Glutathione, we sell this one in a spray. It's a pretty absorbable form. This is a critical antioxidant for the brain. If it is depleted, neurons can die, the blood-brain barrier can break down. So it's kind of a big deal. So glutathione is really important. This is something that can be tested definitely in our Dutch complete test, and I think in the organic acids test will tell you about your glutathione as well. Polyphenols. Polyphenols are plant compounds. There's a lot of them. Turmeric, grape skin, which is called resveratrol, apigenin, which is from celery and parsley, and mine of choice is called EGCG. It's a green tea extract. I started taking this because it's also good for Epstein-Barr virus, and I really like it. I just feel something good about it. So I just take 2 a day. It's very affordable. I need to link this in the document because we didn't used to carry it, but we do now. We also now carry this vinpocetine, which I had never heard of before this lecture, but it's made from the periwinkle plant, and it increases circulation to the brain. You can definitely feel it working, but you have to take it with dinner because it's pretty strong. It can make you a little nauseous. It's just causing a lot of, I don't know, at least for me. So I just have to take it with a lot of food, or it can make me a little queasy. And then there's other things to support the gut as well. I brought to just show you Mega Mucosa is sort of an end stage product to our gut protocols. Mega IgG could be used at any time. It helps with die-off, but these both help restore the barrier in your gut, which is what we want. So again, let's start with the lifestyle, but those are several options for you in the supplement realm. Always start kind of slowly. Oh, here's one more. The MitoQ, it helps for cellular energy. It's a fancy kind of CoQ10. It's subtle. It's not like having coffee, but I take it every day. I feel like it helps me, and it helps me stay young too. So I think that's everything I brought you to show you for supplements. If you have any questions or have any questions about these concepts, I will take them here in the chat. So if you are on the Facebook, I will later share the link so you can join this ongoing series, and that's where I take questions. So there is some advantage. Oh, you couldn't see the prebiotic fiber, Debbie. Oh yeah, there's a lot of glare. Sorry about that. I have my notes on top, so I can't. This is by Microbiome Labs. It's the Mega Prebiotic Fiber. So you're supposed to take it over time. You can take a half scoop to start, or you can later do a whole scoop. So either over the day or over the course of the evening, just so you don't get like a rush of fiber at once. That's the Mega Prebiotic. Whoops. There we go. Yeah, there's a lot of glare. Oh, nobody could see our bottles. Let me just do a quick recap. So that was the prebiotic. I don't know. Let me see if I can make less glare. That's what happens in Arizona. There's a lot of sun. Still doing it. I don't know. Okay, prebiotic. Oh. That's what that looks like. This is the Mega Mucosa. It looks very similar. Sticking with that same brand, this is the Mega IgG. It's an immunoglobulin product that cleans up waste in your gut. This is the first product I mentioned that we do not carry. It's called Enterovite, and it's a short chain fatty acid product. This one is by Apex Energetics. This is the MitoQ CoQ10 I mentioned. We sell this one. This is our magnesium. Oh my gosh, the glare is so bad. Oh, there we go, that's better. This is the EGCG, green tea extract. Yes, you can drink green tea, but I'm pretty caffeine sensitive, so I don't want to be drinking a whole bunch of green tea. The decaf may have it as well. This is the vinpocetine. Let me see if I can get a better one. There we go. Whoops. It's hard to see the name, but there we go, vinpocetine. Just one a day. And this is the fish oil that we sell. It's a wild Alaskan fish oil. And this is the glutathione spray. It's called ACG. We may start carrying another glutathione soon as well. Dana is asking about where do we start if you have an imbalanced gut. So good question. We have a blog to kind of give you some ideas, and I'm going to come out with a more formal guide soon. If you just want to do a little rebalancing, I would start with the Mega IgG plus the Megaspore Biotic. 4 of these, 2 of the Megaspore Biotic. That's a nice, balance things out kind of a situation to do. But then we have some more advanced protocols on our blog. If you think you have an infection, if you know you have candida, you could follow those 2 up. You could do those 2 for a month, and then the next month do Megaspore Biotic plus the pre-fiber. Where is that? That's kind of step 2, is adding the fiber. And then the next month you take out the fiber, or you can keep it, and then you add the Mega Mucosa with the Megaspore Biotic. So I'm going to just give the blog because I know that's a lot to take in. And just as a warning, I have to wrap up kind of soon because I have a client in 5 minutes. So if you have any last questions, is it okay to take the probiotic if you're trying to limit histamine? Oh, the prebiotic. I don't think there's any histamine. It's a very different prebiotic than some. It has immunoglobulins. And I'm sorry, no, the prebiotic doesn't have that. No, I've never heard of a histamine issue with the prebiotic. That's the first time I've had that question though, but I've never, it's designed to be SIBO friendly, and I doubt it's designed for histamines. If it's really not a fit for you, you can return it. Hold on, let me just find the link and then. Okay, here's these gut protocols I'm putting in the chat. If you were doing a parasite protocol, can you do gut rebuilding at the same time, or you need to wait? Usually, Debbie, you do the parasite first and then you move into the rebuilding. I think it's important while you do the parasite protocols to do something like the Mega IgG to help for die-off, and then it's giving you a little protection and kind of easing the process, and then you move more into the rebuilding. That's how we do it. But, it's not necessarily the worst thing to, have some overlap. So I'm just going to share these links again, friends, and then I'll get going. So this first one is for the Energy Summit, where I'll talk more about this subject, and there'll be some other things on the blood-brain barrier. So I'd love for you to sign up. Those are my friends putting that on, so I love the support. If you would like the brain ebook, it's free, and I'll put that here. And if you'd like to try some supplements we talked about, I made a code called August 10. It's 10% off through August. So that's for like 3 more days, but that's enough time, even if you get the replay to, catch it. So thanks so much for being live on here. It makes it a lot more fun for me to have some live questions. I will go over to Facebook and add these same links so that you're not missing out. And I hope to see you next week. Next week, we'll be talking about fasting with David Jockers, and he's a real expert on that topic. So that should be a good one. And yeah, I hope to see all of you there. Thank you so much for being on today. Bye. Also, I don't know how to get you these links when I'm gone. So they will be on Facebook, or just copy them now out of the chat or take a picture. Let's probably copy them because taking a picture will be slow. So just if you want any of these links, just click on them real quick. I'll give another minute and then I'll get going. Thanks, Debbie. Thanks, Anna, Dana, Pauline. Appreciate your questions. If you didn't see the chat, if you're on your phone, it's under participants and then chat. That's how you get to it. Thanks, Lori. Yeah, right now we haven't really set up a follow-up email after these things. We kind of want them to be pretty fluid. So we'll have to think about maybe a place to store these links. We also put them in YouTube. So if you're like, what was that? In a couple of days later, it'll always be on YouTube. So maybe that's the best way to say, hey, if you missed something, go to our YouTube channel. And you can find that. You'll find that here. Great, thanks, Pauline. That's good feedback. I appreciate it. And then you can watch whatever else you want on there that you might have missed. Anna, you didn't see the ebook link? You might need to scroll down. I'll put it in again. Just scroll to the end. Oh, you didn't get in your email? No, I didn't send it by email. But I'll put it in YouTube, and I put it here on the chat, which is in, if you're on your phone, it's under participants and then chat. And if you're on a desktop computer, there's just a button in the lower right for chat you need to open up. All right, thanks so much, everybody. Signing off.